Hi, I'm Sydney,
And I'm Jake.
and you're listening to Two for the Matinee. It's not the worst movie.
Today we'll be talking about little things.
The Little Things.
The little things. And the big things that could have made it better. So let's start off with the synopsis of this movie. Since I think some of our commentary, like one would need to know the plot points to appreciate our commentary. And so this movie is about, the two central characters are
Deke and Jim.
Deke?
Yeah.
Deke?
Deke. That's Denzel's character, Deke.
Okay. So Denzel Washington plays Deke, who is working for small town sheriff's deputy somewhere in like Northern California, formerly of the LAPD. And he's sent to LA to pick up some evidence. And we find out that he left/got kicked out of the LAPD because of something that happened in the past. While he's in LA, he meets Rami Malek, who plays Detective Baxter, who's heading up an investigation regarding a serial killer who preys on young women in the area. And then during the course of the film, we find out that Denzel was also pursuing a serial killer, potentially the same one. And he was also a sort of brilliant young detective in the same way that Detective Baxter is now sort of picked up that role. And they team up on the current case, but Denzel's trying to solve it, thinking that it connects to the previous case. They narrow it down to this guy, Albert Sparma, played by Jared Leto. And as the movie progresses, they suspect him more and more to the point where they get a little obsessed with him. And I mean, to their credit, he is kind of weird. And his behavior suggests that he might know something about the recent killings. And so eventually they break into his house to look for evidence. They follow him around, but he's aware of all of this. So he starts playing mind games with them, which leads to him inviting Detective Baxter to go on a little road trip so he can show him where he buried the last body. Against his better judgment, Detective Baxter goes alone in Sparma's car to the middle of nowhere, and Sparma starts telling him to dig, and he digs a hole and the body's not there. Sparma's like, oh, I forgot, it's somewhere else. And so he keeps making him dig hole after hole while he's taunting him, and gets to the point where Detective Baxter breaks and kills Sparma, at which point Deke shows up, helps him clean up the evidence. And the film ends with Deke setting Detective Baxter at ease by mailing him a piece of evidence that proves that Sparma was the killer. However, in the last scene, we learned that evidence was manufactured. And so we don't know if Sparma was indeed the killer or just a really weird guy.
I'm going to say he was a really weird guy.
Oh, you don't think he was the killer?
No, I don't think he was the killer. And it makes the movie better if he wasn't the killer.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I don't know if we're even supposed to dwell on it that much about whether he is or isn't, because it's more about how the cops react to their suspicions and how they go about trying to solve the case. And regarding Sparma, I think that was the highlight for me. I think I'm not a fan of Jared Leto just because I don't know, he's kind of creepy. Comes off as creepy in every role I've seen him in. But here, I think he really emphasizes that. He plays creepy in, I think, a pretty unique way, and it comes off very realistic. And while I was watching it, I was thinking, like, he should have played the Joker this way in Suicide Squad instead of that over-the-top thing he was doing.
Well, that's the director's fault.
You think so?
Director can be like, no, pull that back a little bit, and he didn't,
Well, we don't know what happened on the set of Suicide Squad.
That is true, but if you're the director and you're talking over your actor with your actors about what these characterizations are going to be, and that's what you decide that you're going to film, then you're to blame for that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, we don't know what Jared Leto, what kind of Joker he brought and what kind of Joker was expected. But regardless, this performance here, I think, was excellent.
Oh, yeah. He was the highlight for me, too. I actually think that both he and Denzel were the highlights of this. I feel Jared Leto was better. Yeah. He actually stole the movie.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You you almost kind of root for him at the end. I think it's, even though he's creepy and you maybe suspect he's the killer, there's like a certain charisma to it. And the fact that the other thing I loved about this movie is how he was able to twist Malik's character, where initially Malik was like sort of coming off as, I'm better than you, I'm like confident, I'm going to take you down. And then he twists it where like Malik gets in the car and you can tell now he's afraid and now he's unsure of himself. And then ultimately Sparma breaks him, where he like ends up killing Sparma because he sort of succumbs to these I don't know, like a brutal, like this brutality that he thinks he's above.
But I like it because when you first see Sparma, he's in that refrigerator repair shop and he's looking all kinds of Charles Manson creepy. And he just comes off as like a really scary, creepy guy. But as you're watching it, the cops start to seem like they're harassing him. And then that's when I feel like you sort of like, what are you doing breaking into his house? I mean, that's not legal. And they're doing all this extra legal stuff. And I'm kind of like, this isn't proper police procedure. I'm kind of on Sparma's side on this. Plus, all the evidence is extremely circumstantial anyway.
Yeah, I mean, do you think at one point I was thinking like, is one of the themes supposed to be like criticism of police corruption?
I mean, I don't know if they were well, yeah, I guess they were corrupt because they covered up Denzel's murder of that innocent girl.
Yeah.
So possibly. I didn't think about it like that. But I enjoyed those two performances. I enjoyed the sort of classical direction of the movie. The director wasn't like frills and pops and all that sort of hip filmmaking. It was very old school filmmaking, and I actually enjoyed it.
A lot of sort of close quarter shots, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think LA is such a big sprawling city that it's like a kind of interesting contrast that a lot of the shots were like, there weren't a lot of those wide expansive shots, but more of like in rooms, people talking.
Yeah. And I mean, I like the first quarter of the movie and I like the last 15 minutes of the movie. I think the middle is a little sloppy, but I like the premise of it, the idea of it. I might not have liked the total execution of it, but the premise is, I think, really good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for me, the movie just, like I said, hinges on the tables sort of turning, because that I didn't expect that. And I liked how that played out. And I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a commentary on sort of the fact that, and Denzel kind of talks about this, like people aren't just like good or bad. Like good people do bad things, bad people do good things. And it's like, is Malik a bad person because he did this bad thing? Or is Denzel a bad person because of what he did? Or is Sparma a bad person because he's creepy? We shouldn't be quick to judge. But speaking of acting performances, I thought Malik was terrible.
Oh, I did too. I think Washington and Leto just blew him out of the water.
He was just so stiff.
I didn't believe that he was an LAPD homicide detective.
He just came off as a robot.
Mr. Robot.
And it would actually make more sense if he was married to his job, but he has this like happy family, which doesn't make sense to me, because like, why would this woman be with this guy who's just like so bland and such a robot?
I kept thinking that I felt like he was trying to, no, never, let me take that back. I kept thinking he really reminded me of Guy Pearce's character from LA Confidential, but just the acting wasn't good.
Yeah, and I realized he naturally has that overbite, right? I thought that was just for the Freddie Mercury role, but
I think they enhanced it for Bohemian Rhapsody.
They elongated his front teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never seen Mr. Robot, so I can't comment on his performance there. I know that it's critically acclaimed. I mean, I thought he did an okay job in Bohemian Rhapsody. I wasn't super impressed. Felt kind of like by the book. But here it's just like, I don't know, it's disappointing.
Well, he seemed kind of almost a little bit creepy to me.
Yeah, or like on the spectrum.
Or that it always seemed like there was something else going on. Maybe they should have written that into the character underneath that, you know? Maybe some pent up rage or something. I don't know. Because there seemed like there but something going on underneath the surface of him during that whole
Right.
entire time.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's the core of the issue. He was too sort of like one-dimensional, too flat.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else going on with him.
Yeah, that was weak to me. And I think the actual procedural part, like the police procedural where they're working the case, was weak to me too.
Yeah.
It seemed like a lot of coincidences that just really, I don't know, happened in the writer's room that weren't believable. But they thought, okay, we'll put that in there.
And yeah, like you, I felt like, I don't know, the middle just didn't work for me. And I think maybe it has to do with believability. Like, I don't know, it's like Denzel was he's like literally like a genius. He's like Sherlock Holmes in this to some extent.
Well, I think at this point, we've seen so many of these movies with serial killers and police officers and police detectives. And like, I think you can't be sloppy about it. I mean, on TV and in the movies and in like television shows and documentaries. So, I mean,
Is this an adapted screenplay? I didn't see.
no,
An original?
This is an original.
Oh, well, serial killers are in, so I guess maybe there's a lower threshold for it getting made because people will watch it, especially when you've got these stars attached. I don't know. How would you fix it? How would you even fix it?
I would lean more into making this a character study of two men and how homicide work has affected their personal lives and affected them psychologically. And I would give it more believable detective work. And I'm cool with the ambiguity of the ending. And like I said, I like it, but I think the police work in the middle should be tighter. I think that they should also question if Sparma's guilty. They should also maybe voice doubts, but then press ahead with pursuing him, even if one of them has like serious doubts. So it makes the ending even more, I would say, kind of tragic. Not tragic that he's dead, but tragic that, these two men have let this happen.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was missing was stakes to some extent. I mean, yes, we get it. They want to prevent future murders, but it's not clear why they get more desperate. Like there's no scene where like, I guess the is it the captain of the police who he says he's going to bring the FBI in. I guess that's sort of the ticking clock and the stakes.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that urgent.
And also, would that captain let Deke just become a part of this case? It seems really, there's no explanation. It's not believable. This kind of,
he's doing it off the books, right? It's Malek who's,
but the captain knows about it.
Yeah, and he's telling Malek like, don't do it, but not doing it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But again, I mean, I don't know that much about police hierarchy and like following orders and whatnot, but you would think that he would tell Dexter to keep away from this guy, and he would.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to see them both sort of spiral into being totally obsessed with Sparma. But also I would like to have seen Rami Malek's character, hence of the explosiveness that we see at the end. I mean, he hits the car window like once, but I want to see some underlying like tension in his character so that when he does smack him in the head with the shovel, I believe that he's gotten to the point he was pushed to where he would smack him in the head with a shovel.
See, it's tricky because on the one hand, I do agree with you, but on the other hand, it's sort of a study of, everyone can be pushed too far.
But he wasn't really pushing him. He was just like, oh, I know where you live, blah, blah, blah. He's probably heard that shit a million times.
Yeah, that's true.
And he's on the TV all the time anyway. So I'm sure people are like, cops or people he's put away probably are like, oh, that guy. So, and he's seen shit because he's a homicide detective and he's working this. So it's like really with those few little words from this guy caused that. I didn't buy it. It seemed to be...
He's too fragile.
It seemed to be more for shock value than motivated by character.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. It also seems like there weren't a lot of consequences, right, to what ended up happening. Like, I guess there was some inner turmoil, but there wasn't real consequences to him killing Sparma, to Zeke cleaning it up, to Zeke getting involved in the investigation, to Dexter letting him get involved in the investigation. And here's the real kicker here. If Sparma's not the killer, then the hair clip that Denzel sends Dexter to prove to him that he was the killer, like, that would be debunked after the next murder.
Right.
Right? So it's just like it's at best a delay tactic.
I mean, I don't think I looked at my phone while I was watching. I was entertained.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Has Denzel ever had a weak performance? No. Like, I'll watch pretty much anything with him in it because he always brings it.
Yeah, I mean, I was entertained by this, and I think it was because of Denzel and Jared.
Yeah, it did have a mystery element to it, and I was curious about how it would get resolved.
And that opening was fantastic with the girl in the car.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, the opening was really good. It had a lot of tension. I mean, I was getting stressed.
Yeah, I guess they should have kind of used that more throughout the movie, of people being in tense situations, because yeah, it was good. Because
the second girl that gets, well, the first girl gets away, but then we see the jogger, and we see that from like above, that a car just comes up behind her and the lights go out. Like, they should have played that same scene over, but this time she doesn't get away.
Yeah, I could see that kind of parallel that.
Mm-hmm.
It'd also be interesting if they cast the suspicion on like one of the cops, right? Because Denzel thinks like there were murders, like, what is it, 5 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I forget what the timeline is, when he was in LAPD. And so I think they stopped when he left, and then they started up again.
Yeah, but I feel like that's too easy. That's like obvious. Because when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I was like, is this going to be one of the things where like the Denzel is going to be the serial killer because he's a cop?
No, just cast suspicion.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's back in town and the killing started.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I feel like that would be an easy way out, an easy thing to do.
Just make him a little crazy, man. He's always like very straight. Make him a little crazy. Get him out of his comfort zone.
Well, maybe he wouldn't have taken the role.
I feel like in some of the other movies we've talked about, they might have been worse, but that at least like inspired more conversation, which I don't know. Maybe that says something about the movie. This is just kind of like blah.
Yeah, our lost episode of Midnight Sky.
Yeah, maybe it's because we love sci-fi. I don't know. Or maybe that says that this movie wasn't that bad and there wasn't like huge things that needed fixing.
I mean, I love mysteries, and I love this. What year was this movie set in? Was this in the 90s?
No, I think it's now.
No, it wasn't now. You see all those old ass cars on the road every time they went somewhere? It wasn't now. I'm gonna look it up.
I thought that was just for effect.
No,
Didn't they have cell phones?
No, they did not have cell phone. Remember, he went to a payphone.
I guess you're right. See, I didn't even I noticed the old cars, and I'm like, I mean, I could tell like, okay, maybe Sparma's like a car collector. That makes sense. I couldn't tell why Denzel, like where Denzel got his car. Like, he wouldn't be driving that car today. Maybe it was set in the 90s.
I think it was 1990.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of it almost as a sequel to Training Day.
Not even close. Yeah, one night in 1990, a girl drives on the highway stalked by a motorist. So yeah, it's 1990.
Well, I guess that's another flaw, because they didn't really like use that to good effect besides having old cars. Like, what was the point of setting it in the 90s?
I agree, because
I guess just getting rid of technology, simplifying it.
Oh yeah, because remember they're talking about the fingerprinting and how the guy was talking about how those weren't automated or whatever. Something he had to do with the fingerprints. Yeah,
and if everyone had cell phones, you could just GPS Sparma.
Right. Or he could just be like, hey, I'm in this car with Sparma. Send a text.
I guess note to self, if you're writing a mystery, set it before cell phones. Makes it easier.
I agree. I mean, unless you're going to use the technology to your advantage, part of the story, because otherwise it just makes everything like, what's the point? This movie will be over in 20 minutes.
That's why those Sherlock Holmes stories, I feel like they were so much easier to write because like no one knew anything. We just make shit up. Now it's like there's too many constraints because everybody knows everything. You can track everything. You have to be really smart to get away with murder these days. All right. Any closing remarks?
I mean, it was an okay watch.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather watch this than rewatch The Godfather Part 3 yet again. So, all right, I'm Jake.
And I'm Sydney.
And you've been listening to Two for the Matinee. It's not the worst movie.
Join us next week when we have another movie that's not the worst.
In the meantime, pay attention to the little things. They matter.